that she would be as big a star as Elaine Page, who is a celebrated singer and actress in the UK. The audience and judges just rolled their eyes and laughed. The awkward performer was no Elaine Page. The music began, and after the words, "I dreamed a dream in time gone by," just after that first phrase of the song, the entire auditorium had changed their minds. Susan Boyle might very well be a superstar after all. Her voice was breathtaking, and within moments, the audience was on their feet, stunned by the talent that they had dismissed just moments ago because the packaging was unexpected. Overnight, Susan Boyle became a global sensation, proving that greatness is not about appearances or first impressions. Her unexpected rise didn't end that night. Susan Boyle went on to sell over 19 million albums worldwide, breaking records as the fastest-selling debut artist in the history of the UK. She sang for the Queen, performed on some of the world's biggest stages, and inspired millions with her story. All of this from a woman who moments before opening her mouth to sing had been dismissed. Susan Boyle's moment was a reminder that we often judge too quickly, dismissing people based on their appearance or assumptions. But as she stood there, defying every expectation, she embodied a story, well, as old as time. Something we see in the stories of other people as well, and in the story of David, King David, and in the calling of Simon, whom we know better as Peter. Samuel was the guy in the Old Testament in Israel who anointed kings. He had anointed Saul to be the first king of Israel, and Saul was the people's choice, not God's choice. Saul was a total package. He looked and acted the part of king. He was chosen much as a casting director might choose someone who looks the part. He quickly proved himself unfit as king and lost favor with God, who sent Samuel out to the house of Jesse to anoint the one God knew would be a good king. Now Jesse had a whole house full of strapping kingly sons and probably brought them before Samuel. Samuel, though, didn't get that nudge from God about any of them and asked if there were more somewhere. And only the runt, Jesse said, the little kid that's out tending to the sheep, he's just a little kid. He's not what you're looking for. But he was sent out to retrieve him. And once he came in, Samuel's heart was immediately warmed, and he anointed this kid named David to be the king over Israel. David was a sinful man. He committed a lot of heinous acts, but he always repented and turned back to God and sought God's ways. Peter was like him in many ways. He wasn't the obvious choice either. He wasn't a scholar or religious leader. He was a fisherman, a cynic, a guy with calloused hands who spent his days hauling in nets. No one looked at him and thought, oh, hey, there's a future pillar of the church. But just like David, God saw something deeper. One day while Peter was cleaning his nets after a long and unproductive night of fishing, Jesus appeared. He stepped into his boat and he taught the people on the shore, and then he told Peter to take his boat out and drop the nets again. And as we saw in the clip, Peter was pretty reluctant to do so, having done that all night long and got nothing. But something about Jesus' presence nudged him to listen, so he cast his nets one more time, and suddenly there were so many fish, the nets almost broke. He was overwhelmed, and he fell to his knees and said, "Go away from me, for I am a sinful man." He didn't feel worthy, but Jesus looked at him, not with judgment, not with dismissal, but with calling. Don't be afraid. From now on, Just like David, Peter wasn't chosen because he was the strongest or the smartest. He was chosen because his heart was open. Open to being sought, open to being called, open for whatever God had next. So what does this mean for us? Well, maybe you have felt dismissed or been underestimated, like Susan Boyle before she sang, or like David before he was anointed, or like Peter before he dropped his nets. Maybe you've questioned whether you are truly called, truly seen, or truly enough. Good news is, God sees what the rest of us tend to overlook. God chooses the unexpected, and God still steps into boats, calls ordinary people to live extraordinary lives. The question is, will we listen? Will we go into the deeper waters? Will we believe that we are called? Are we capable of leading a program, of teaching others? Are we capable of leading the church or praying at the table? When God calls you to step out of your comfort zone and serve in a way that you have not before, how will you respond? When you feel God calling you to pray over a situation, or with a friend, or even a stranger, what will you do? I had a similar issue myself when I felt God calling me into ministry. I could not imagine that God wanted me to lead a church, and I resisted that calling for quite some time. I know this is surprising, but I was stubborn. I was quick to reject nonsense, even when it came from authority. I was a little mouthy, and never really took things too seriously. In fact, I was always too quick to point out something silly so that we could all get a chuckle about it. God, I asked, why in the world would you want someone like me? And God said, well, I got some stubborn churches too, and I think you'd be perfect for them. So here we are. Just like Peter, just like David, just like Susan Boyle, standing at the edge of something deeper. And the question isn't whether we are worthy, we're probably not. The question isn't whether we have the right background or the right resume, we likely don't. The only question that matters is, will we say yes? Jesus still steps into boats, still calls ordinary people, still sends us into deeper waters. So what about you? What's the thing you've been resisting because you think you're not enough? It's not always a program that we're called to. Sometimes we are called to just grow in our faith. Sometimes we are called to take that next step that will deepen our spiritual connection. Sometimes we are called to forgive someone. And sometimes that someone is ourselves. Maybe we've held on to things for too long. Maybe we're called to mend a relationship that's struggling or broken. Or maybe it's to let go of cynicism and pessimism and grab on to some available hope that God provides. Maybe it's to open our heart once again to love. Where is God nudging you to trust, to step forward, to cast your net one more time? Because if history teaches us anything, it's that God doesn't wait for the perfect person. God calls the willing and then equips them for the work ahead. I want to be the kind of person that says, all right, God, let's go. What's next? What about you? Are you in? Want to go drop some nets and see what happens? Amen. Shall we sing?